So yesterday, whatever keywords we have discussed, I think those things are clear. Okay, so yesterday capitalism we have talked about, socialism, mixed economy, and all these areas. I think things are clear. Okay, so today what we will do is we'll start moving a little forward by hitting these keywords through evolution of Indian economy. Now, if we talk about evolution of Indian economy, so I'll be talking about basically after 1940s, 1947, how India has evolved basically. Okay, so initially we adopted principles of socialism, isn't it? So initially we adopted principles of socialism, and our socialism was quite different from erstwhile USSR, and we called it as something like mixed economy. So that means though public and private sector participate in the process of the economic growth of the country, more predominance was given to public or the government sector. This is something which we know. So because of that, it was an era of license Raj. I used this word yesterday also. So you can see this picture there. So era of license Raj, what was the situation? So the businessmen did not have the freedom to do business. Their hands and legs are tied. If you could see this picture there, their hands and legs are tied with respect to doing business. That means there is no much freedom for starting even a very small business. Also, you have to take license from the government. To increase production also, you have to take license from the government. This is what his hands are being tied. And therefore, the problem here would be if your hands are tied, your legs are tied, in the sense like that means there is no freedom for doing business. And bureaucrats, for every license, you have to approach the government officer. So it also breeded in something called as corruption. So that is the reason, this is one of the important reason for efficiency not being there with respect to Indian industries. Efficiency not being there with respect to Indian industry. One second. Okay. So efficiency not being there with respect to Indian industry. So this was also called as the era of license Raj, where India's manufacturing was not doing well. I also want to give you one more picture here during this point of time. What was that is, see, so this was the era of license Raj. Okay. So during license Raj, for licenses, you had to wait, etc., etc. And industries did not develop, obviously. Industry regulated. So industry was regulated. So what I mean by regulation? So government approvals. Okay, government allotting licenses. Okay. Similarly, during that point of time, after the British rule, we wanted to protect the labor. So we came up with stringent labor laws. Very important point. I'm making one more point here is stringent labor laws. So I'm using the word labor laws here. Okay. So stringent labor laws. When I'm saying stringent labor laws here, it means when we are talking about labor laws to protect the labor, there were certain labor laws like Industrial Disputes Act, etc. Don't worry much about that. What I want to tell you is government wanted to protect the labor. So in order to protect the labor, what did the government do is government came up with stringent labor laws like Industrial Disputes Act, etc. According to such labor laws, if there are 100 employees, if there are 100 permanent employees or 100 workers in a company, if you have to retrench labor, if you have to remove labor, you need to take the permission of Ministry of Labor and Employment. That means you need to take the permission of government. That means the businessmen, you found, one is they did not have the freedom to obtain licenses, their hands were tied, rules and restrictions. On the other side, with respect to stringent labor laws, if they have to retrench labor, if they have to remove labor, there also you need to take the permission of government. So under such circumstances, what will happen, since you have to take permission from government, most of the industrialists decided to manage using contract labor. These are not permanent labor, contract labor. I'm using the word contract labor here, contract labor. So if you have 100 permanent employees, If you have to retrench labor, remove labor, you need to take the permission of government. Why unnecessarily recruit permanent labor? So why can't we manage with contract labor? So that contract labor means you want to get the work done, you push them off. You don't give them pension. There's nothing like health benefits, nothing. Okay, so they started managing with contract labor. Now, because of this license Raj era, our manufacturing industry was suffering. So there was no much of profits. No industries could develop properly during this period of time. And if manufacturing industries were suffering, there were no adequate jobs that could have been created. So jobs were not created in the manufacturing sector. So that means along with health education, there was huge amount of unemployment problem. This is something which you have to observe there. So this is about the background of the license Raj era, restricted rules and regulations, because of which we had these problems. Manufacturing industry did not develop. Along with manufacturing industry not developing, job creation also became an issue. So I think till here, things are clear. You're able to follow. Okay, so job creation has become a big challenge for the government. So no jobs means no incomes, means obviously poverty also will be an issue. Poverty, everything can be linked up here. So our industry was not doing well, job was not there. For those who are working in the factories, you did not have any health benefits because most of them were contract labor. So like this, our industries were running. This is this point of time after independence because of license Raj. One more important aspect which we need to observe here is during the same period. Okay, so we call India, India is one such country. India is one such country where, we were talking about agriculture being the bedrock, okay, or backbone. But after independence, we were not self-sufficient. Self-sufficient means we were not in a position to feed our population. Huge population, but we were not in a position to feed our population. So that means there is a problem even with respect to our agriculture. Okay, so that is a point of time, okay, where India had to depend on something like India had to depend on other countries for food imports. So we were not able to produce food grains sufficient enough. We were not able to produce food grains sufficient enough to supply to our population. So we had to depend on other countries for food imports. Now, this is a very big challenge because when you are depending on other countries for necessities, you should never depend on others for necessities because you lose your sovereignty, you lose your freedom. They will take decisions for you. Okay, so this is a big challenge which we were facing during that point of time after independence. Okay, so we had to depend on this program called Food for Peace program, or US was trying to help some third world countries with respect to giving cheap food grains to handle hunger. Okay, so there is this Public Law 480, or we call it as PL 480 program, through which US was supplying food grains to third world countries. And India, since we were starving, we also wanted to depend on PL 480 scheme of the US. And at the same time, when we have to make payments to US, we were not in a position to make payments in dollars. We did not have sufficient dollars to make payments. So they were ready to accept rupees from us, Indian rupees from us, and give us cheap food grains through this scheme called PL 480. So on one side, license Raj and industry and jobs. On the other side, India was not doing well with respect to agriculture, starvation deaths, etc. So we had to depend on other countries even to feed our population. And especially we were dependent on the scheme of US called Public Law 480, through which as part of the Food for Work program, okay, Food for Peace program, US was supplying food grains to other third world countries at throwaway prices. Throwaway prices at lesser prices. It's not free. Okay, so it's not free. That is something which you have to remember. It's not free. Okay. Repeat once again. Which area you want me to repeat? Somebody's asked, Anusha. Repeat for which area? PL 480? License Raj. Okay. Okay. So see, first of all, license Raj means during that point of time, for every industry you have to take license. Okay. So why? Because we believed in socialism. Government is the major driver of the economy. So every small businessman who has to run his business will apply for license. So license is given by government officers or bureaucrats. So this license Raj era, like Gunda Raj, license Raj era, led to corruption. They were not allowing the rupee to move easily. You can see here. See the chains. Okay. And you can see if he is the businessman here, what I'm trying to say is, you can see here, his chains is tied with chains. Okay. And you're not allowing him to do business easily because of restrictions, because of license Raj. That is what I mean by license Raj here. They're not going to allow him to do business properly because of license Raj. Okay. So you can see these officers out here. Okay. So who are tying his legs and hands, and you're not allowing him to do business freely. Now, when you're not allowing him to do business freely, it's not through one aspect, but from multiple aspects. Even they were regulating aspects related to labor. That means the businessman cannot retrench labor. He cannot kick the labor out also unless and until he takes permission from government. If at all in a company there are 100 workers, if you have to remove one worker also, you need to take permission from the government. Now, this is a big challenge for the businessman. So what he will decide, why to have 100 employees, permanent employees, why can't I manage with contract labor? So if he is going to decide, what is going to happen? You cannot create permanent jobs. You'll only be, there will be contract labor. So that means on one side, manufacturing was not doing well. On other side, a lot of restrictions. Because of that, there is corruption. Okay. Unemployment is there because manufacturing is not developing. Job creation was not happening. Okay. So unemployment problem is there. Already health and education were all also not doing well. So this is what I wanted to explain through this word called license Raj after independence. I hope things are clear. Okay, so I'm talking about self-sufficiency with respect to food grains also. Okay, so this is basically the food for work program, which I'm talking about here. So this food for work program, in this food for work program, food for peace program, you can observe this diagram here. Okay, so PL 480 is a scheme of US basically. It's a scheme of US, and through which it is trying to supply food grains to the third world countries. Okay, to the third world countries, it's supplying food grains at throwaway prices. So there is food scarcity in countries like India, and we are dependent on other countries for basic food or requirements. And US, through this scheme called PL 480, Public Law 480, was supplying food grains to countries like India. Now the problem here is, one is, they were supplying us food grains not free of cost, but at a little lesser price, and they were accepting Indian rupees to supply food grains. Basically, they don't accept rupees, but here as a convenience, they started accepting Indian rupees and supply food grains. Okay, so you can see this chart here. The food minister is trying to handle food scarcity, okay, through this scheme called PL 480. India is not sufficient. You can see US here. Okay, so US scheme of PL 480, you are trying to handle food security. But just understand, such a huge population like India, can you handle food security, or can you handle food scarcity through food imports from other countries? It's a very difficult task. It is very, very important that countries like India become self-sufficient with respect to handling food security by increasing our agricultural output. This is one important aspect. Another important aspect which you need to observe here is, if you are dependent on other countries for basic necessities like food, it is not going to be good. It's going to be a problem. It's going to be a challenge. Why it's going to be a challenge is because if you're dependent on basic necessities like food, they can command India, or they can decide. Tomorrow they may say we'll stop PL 480 if you are not listening to us, or if you are not spreading principles of capitalism. Whatever it is, never a country should be dependent on other countries for basic necessities. This was observed. And since this is there, we also focused on something called as agriculture in the first 5-year plan. So in the first 5-year plan, yes, we wanted to first become self-sufficient with respect to agriculture. Obviously, why? Because food security is the most important aspect. And therefore, in the first 5-year plan, we had to focus on agriculture. So no doubt about it. So we decided to focus on agriculture in the first 5-year plan. So what was the focus in the first 5-year plan? It was agriculture. Reason being, we wanted to become self-sufficient with respect to basic food. Okay, so this is what we did. So in the first 5-year plan, we decided to focus on agriculture. And though we started focusing on agriculture, we did not become self-sufficient till 1967-68. Remember this. Agriculture remained as a subsistence sector only. What I mean by subsistence here, subsistence means you are just, it is not even hand to mouth. Okay, so it is basically not even your basic needs are met. And there are multiple reasons why our agriculture was suffering. Now try to observe from situations around you. During the British era, that is during the British government's period, British government came up with certain tenancy laws, like, for example, it has come up with Zamindari system. I think most of you should be knowing about Zamindari system. You'll watch in the movies also, they show. Okay, so Zamindari system is there. You also have something like the Raitwari system, etc., etc. Now, what happened in this Zamindari system? The British government appointed some Zamindars. And these Zamindars were the intermediaries. They were the people who were trying to collect taxes from the peasants, from the farmers. But the main challenge there was these Zamindars were ruthless. The British government, alien government, was always interested in money. And Zamindars were also interested in making money. And they were exploiting the farmers or exploiting the peasants. Okay, so the rent that was collected, the taxes that were collected were exorbitant, very, very high. And this was a very, very big challenge for the peasants because of these British tenancy rules which the British government has come up with, like the Zamindari system. Now, one more observation here is, after independence also, almost like 53% of the land was under the control of Zamindars. Okay, almost 53% of the land was under the control of Zamindars. It means, what is the problem here? When you are talking about socialism, when you want to bring in social justice, you cannot bring in social justice unless and until you distribute land effectively. Remember this. So you're talking about, especially in the rural areas, you are talking about social justice, you're talking about reducing inequalities. All that cannot happen unless and until land is distributed effectively. So that is the reason Indian government came up with mechanisms like abolition of Zamindars. Of course, we were not fully successful. So we implemented something like land reforms. We wanted to distribute land to everybody, and we came up with reforms in the format of Zamindari abolition, or we call it as implementation of land reforms. We came up with implementation of land reforms. Okay, so we wanted to distribute. We came up with putting a ceiling limit. Upper ceiling limit means we came up with fixing an upper limit. So somebody is having more than this upper limit, this additional land has to be distributed. So we wanted to abolish the Zamindari system. But of course, we'll discuss that in the syllabus later. But what you should understand is the purpose is to mainly bring in social justice. You're practicing principles of socialism and ensuring social justice becomes impossible unless and until this important resource called land is effectively distributed. That was not happening. I think you're able to understand, everybody. Is the pace clear? You're able to follow? Yes. Okay, good. So, so that means during that point of time, zamindari abolition, we could not do it. Okay, on one side, we were dependent on other countries with respect to schemes like PL 480. So, see the food minister serving, handling food security through PL 480. With such a small bowl called PL 480, how can you fill the stomachs of such huge population in India? And one more important thing, food imports. This is food imports, right? Food imports. PL 480 was irregular in nature. Irregular means what? They are not coming on a continuous basis. So therefore, handling food security or food scarcity through imports, food imports like PL 480 is not a correct strategy. This is what we have understood by the time of 1960s. And we also understood that the government, US government, will slowly scrap PL 480. It will stop PL 480, and therefore India has to become self-sufficient under any circumstances. India realized that yes, we have to increase our agricultural output. Yes, we have to increase our agricultural yield. Remember this. Okay, though we came up with first focusing on agriculture in the first 5-year plan. Okay, and we also came up with zamindari abolition. All these were only partially successful. Our land reforms were not fully successful. We failed in terms of eliminating zamindars. Remember this. So these zamindari abolition could not be done. And one more problem is because of these zamindars, and there was one more system called the Raitwari system. One was the zamindari system. Don't worry much about it. Raitwari system means what? What happens here in this? The British government used to directly take the revenues from, collect taxes from the peasant. So from the farmer, the British government used to directly collect the taxes. Okay, and the money that is collected is huge. Now, when there is drought, when there is a problem, the farmer will not be in a position to pay money to the British government. Under such circumstances, the farmers or the peasants are forced. So what will the peasant do? The peasant will start depending on another parasitic class called money lenders. So dependence on money lenders increased because of these British systems of zamindari system or Raitwari. Zamindari system, what happens? Intermediary called zamindar is there. He is going to collect taxes on behalf of the government. In Raitwari system, the British government used to directly collect the revenues from the farmer, taxes from the farmer. And that too, most of the time in cash format. When enough cash is not there with the farmer, what will the farmer do? He started depending on money lenders. Now, this is a disaster where the farmer starts depending on the money lender and the farmer was continuously exploited. Remember this. So once in debt, always in debt. Once in debt, always in debt is a quotation for farmer, please. See here. DEBT. Okay, so debt, I'm talking about debt. Once in debt, always in debt. Once a farmer is in debt, it's not about Vijay Mallya. Business has to be done by taking money from others. But farmer situation is completely different. So once in debt, always in debt is a quotation framed from farmers because they were dependent on money lenders. They were completely dependent on money lenders. And even till date, since our banking system could not spread their wings into every nook and corner of the country, even till date, the poor farmers are still dependent on money lenders. And farmers don't know calculations. They are continuously exploited by money lenders for their complete lifetime. And that is why that quotation called once in debt, always in debt. I hope this word called money lender is clear. The word zamindari system is clear, as well as I used a word called Raitwari system. So words only. This is a keyword. It's a basics class. Don't worry. In our land reforms, in detail, we will discuss Raitwari, Mahalwari and all. In your history also, you will discuss. Okay, fine. Thank you. Okay. So this is about the focus on agriculture. So first 5-year plan, we were focusing on agriculture. Okay. Now talking about the second 5-year plan. Now, immediately after the first 5-year plan, what did we do? Now, this is one more thing. So after the first 5-year plan, okay, so suddenly our focus shifted towards second 5-year plan. The second 5-year plan, we decided to focus on heavy industry, like the iron and steel industries, Now, sir, is there a problem of focusing on heavy industry? There's no problem. We wanted to become self-sufficient. We did not want to depend on other countries for bigger industries like iron and steel. And therefore, we decided, yes, we will go ahead with focusing on heavy industry model in the second 5-year plan. But the problem here is we started focusing too much on iron and steel. You, through this Nehru's Mahal-Nobis model, you call it as, don't worry about that. The Nehru's model, Mahal-Nobis model, you call it as. Okay, don't complicate it. Second 5-year plan, heavy industry, that much you remember. So this heavy industry model, if we would have spent similar amount of money on textiles, textile is a small industry. We were spending money on textiles. We can spend money on steel, the bigger industries like iron and steel. Now the problem is, yes, bigger industries, you have to focus. You need to become self-sufficient, no doubt about it. You can't depend on imports from other countries for steel industries. All that is fine. But if for every 1 rupee spent here, if the same rupee is spent here on textiles, on smaller sectors which are labor intensive. Now I'm using a word here, very important word, labor intensive. Okay, another word in the basics class would be capital intensive. Okay, one word is labor intensive, another word is capital intensive. So labor intensive is there, and another one is capital intensive. So when I'm using the word labor intensive, it means more labor is involved with respect to the production. Okay, so if you're spending money on textile industries, you can create 400 more jobs in comparison to iron and steel. Now, this is one statistics. So spending money on 1 rupee spent on textiles, same amount of money spent on steel, you will be able to create 400 more jobs in textiles in comparison to steel. The problem here is not that we have to, it is wrong that we have focused on steel. It's okay that we focused on iron and steel, the bigger industries. But at the same time, we should have also focused on certain industries and sectors like textiles. That is one aspect which you should observe in the second 5-year plan. Another important aspect which we should observe is, if you're focusing on iron and steel, who was the major driver of the economy? Was it private sector? No, it was government basically. So government was trying to handle these setting up bigger industries, and government was highly inefficient. Government was highly inefficient. I think everybody knows this word called, okay, so this word called iron and steel industries. So during that point of time, it was government. Somebody has written 3 main iron steel industries in second. So don't worry about the facts now. All that content is there. First focus on the keywords, ma. Okay, so government basically, government started focusing on iron and steel industries. And one more important problem there with respect to government was highly inefficient. Government was highly inefficient. That means even with respect to these bigger industries also, we were not good. Government was highly inefficient. We neglected with respect to focus on textiles. And during the same point of time, what happened was, in the early 1960s, so in the evolution process, we have seen first 5-year plan. We have understood TL 480. Government came up with implementing land reforms, dependence on farmers on money lenders. Self-sufficiency was not there with respect to agriculture. Because of license Raj, our industry was not doing well. Because of stringent labor laws, employment generation was also not happening. Manufacturing sector was not doing well. Because manufacturing sector was not doing well, creation of jobs was becoming difficult. Now, this is what you have to understand till 1960s. Guys, please don't focus on facts now. Okay, so start focusing on understanding in the first 16 hours. Please focus on understanding the words and the concepts. Okay, so don't get into the details of facts, because I'm not touching any facts. Till now, I've not touched any facts. In fact, facts starts from 1930s onwards, from Great Depression. We've not touched anything related factual data. Okay. Somebody is mentioning there, as heavy industries capital intensive, obviously. So here, one word which we have discussed there is labor intensive. So labor intensive, you need more labor. Another word opposite here would be capital intensive. So one is labor intensive, another one is capital intensive. So capital intensity means it is investment driven. It is technology driven. It is investment driven. Okay. So capital intensive. So more focus on capital intensive industries than labor intensive industries will create the problem of jobs. Of course, the scenario changes presently. Now, if you are talking about technology and all, so government's policy right now, government wants to focus on capital intensive industries. Government wants to increase efficiency. And government also says that it can create jobs. That's a different viewpoint. We are not discussing about the present scenario. We are not talking about Modi ji's policy. That I will touch when I touch my 2017-18. Not now. So we are only talking about the keyword called labor intensive, capital intensive. Second 5-year plan, heavy industry. Our focus was on capital intensity and labor intensive industries. If we would have focused, probably we would have created more jobs. Okay, we would have created more jobs. Somebody has, Lakshmikant has some doubts. What is the doubt? Some examples of facts. Some examples of facts in economy. I didn't get you, Lakshmikant. Like some examples of, see, first of all, Lakshmikant, for example, first of all, we should know what is GDP. Okay. Then once we understand what is it, our facts start from there. For example, you say contribution of, suppose you say India is going to become a $5 trillion economy by 2025. Contribution of services sector to GDP is 57%. Contribution of agriculture sector is 13.9%. Contribution of GDP to health, contribution of how much you are spending on health, 1.2% of GDP we are spending on health. How much are you going to spend on education? 3.2% of GDP on education. These are facts. What is the contribution of services sector to employment opportunity? 23%. Like that. These are facts. This is what is facts. Okay, and facts are very important for writing the exam, especially mains. Especially mains, facts are very important. But first of all, facts are available everywhere. In the starting classes, please grasp the concept and the words. Once the words and concepts are clear, then facts will flow automatically. Without knowing what is GDP, there is no point in understanding which sector contributes how much to GDP. Which sector contributes to how much to GDP? That will not be there. Since it's a basic session, you have these nice colorful pictures there without factual data. So whole of economy can't be so colorful, which is so motivating and colorful where you only see pictures. No, this is basically to make things easy for you so that the words gets registered in your mind. So the key words will get registered in your mind so that the difficulty will be lost and you'll feel economics is easy and you'll start loving economics. Once you start loving economics, then I will display my facts or I will show what can be done. That comes next. So stay cool for at least 10 to 12 hours where we have to discuss basics. Till 2019, I'll be discussing evolution. And through evolution, I'll be hitting keywords like capital intensity, rupee value, appreciation, depreciation, like that. Okay, so let's move forward. I think you got my point. You understood my style of teaching, right? So, but in the early 60s, now this is the problem in the early 60s. So in the early 60s, what happened was there was continuous drought. Now, when there is continuous drought, what is going to happen? Starvation, deaths. And PL 480 will not be helping India, and almost PL 480 is already gone because US does not have resources to supply food grains. Now that means there is huge amount of pressure on India with respect to becoming self-sufficient. You have to increase agricultural output. We have to increase our agricultural production. We have to increase our agricultural output. I think it is clear till here. Okay, so agricultural output has to increase, agricultural production has to increase. And this we realized in the early 60s that, okay, continuous droughts, and one side droughts, continuous droughts. On the other side, what was happening is our population was growing more than expected. We expected that our GDP will grow. For example, I don't want to use the word GDP. I'll say our economy will grow at a rate of 5%. Our expectation was our economy will grow at a rate of 5%. We expected. Okay. But economy was growing at a rate of only 3% in 1960s. Economy growth, output growth, expected 5. Okay. But reality, population, we expected that it will grow at 1.2%. Population will grow at 1.2%. Okay, but population was growing at almost like 2.3%. That means population growth was more than expected, but economic growth or economic output was less than expected. Economic output was less than expected. Population output was more than expected. Now, this was the situation. So problem is what? To this increasing population output, then the increasing population, how do you provide food security? On one side, you cannot depend on PL 480, and on the other side, you have drought and starvation deaths. So therefore, how are you going to bring in that stability, or how are you going to ensure food security has become a big challenge for the government? It has become a very big challenge for the government. Ensuring food security has become a big challenge for the government.